Well, our user test file is looking pretty good, and we've now got a ton of logic inside of here that we probably want to make use of inside of our other test files. So in other words, we probably want to have an identical before all statement inside of our users2 test file and users3 as well. We could definitely just copy paste this entire before all, but then we would have some duplicated code between our different test files. So rather than just copying the entire before all, let's make a helper file that will have some code inside of it related to setting up our database to be ready for some different tests. So inside of my test directory, I'm going to make a new file called context.js. The idea of this file is it's going to make some kind of instance of a class that will serve as the context, or essentially as a place where we can store a lot of different helpers and whatnot for all of our different test files. Inside of here, I'm going to make a class called context, and then export that class at the bottom right away. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. This class context is going to have some slightly advanced code inside of it that is really not at all related to Postgres in any way, shape, or form. It's really more related to how we set up a test suite and run tests and stuff like that. So we're going to go through the implementation of this class very, very quickly. We're essentially going to copy paste some code around and reorganize it. And by the end, we're going to have something that works really well. And I'm just going to kind of leave it up to you to figure out how this thing works. At the end of the day, it's going to be really simple in its functionality. But just because there's going to be a lot of code that we're moving around really quickly, that's the reason it's going to be just a little bit complicated. So having said that, let's get to it. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to add in a static method to this class with async that we're going to call build. Inside of here, we're going to place all the code that we just wrote out inside of that before all statement back inside of our test file. So I'm going to go back to my test file. I'll find the before all. I'm going to take everything from that first comment down to the very bottom of that function. I'm going to cut all of that, go back over to my context.js file, and paste all of it inside of build. And then fix up the indentation just a little bit. Next up, at the very bottom of the build function, so here's the very bottom of the build function right here, I'm going to return a new instance of context, and I'm going to provide the role name that we had randomly generated to it. Then outside the build function, we're going to define a constructor. This will accept that role name. It will assign the role name to the role name property, like so. And then finally, at the very top of the file, we're going to add in a couple of different require statements. So at the very top, we will add in all the different require statements we need to make this build function work as expected. So we definitely need the random bytes function from crypto. We definitely need format from PG format, and then default migrate from node PG migrate. We also are making use of pool inside of here as well, so let's make sure we require in our pool too. Now back inside of our users test.js file, I'm going to clean up those three require statements that we don't need anymore. I'm going to require in the context class that we just created. And then inside the before all, we're going to create an instance of context by using context.build. And I think that should be enough to actually get us started and run the test successfully at least one time. I think so anyways. We'll see if I'm actually right or not. So let's save this as it stands right now. I'm going to go back over to my terminal and run my tests. So I should see at least that one test file of users test.js passing, and yep, it looks like it is. Looks like everything is still working as expected. So now you might be kind of curious, why did we create context at all? Why does it have the build function? Why is any of this going on? Well, remember, as we start to create all these different test files and run our tests, every single time we run a test, we are creating a different schema inside of our database. So over time, as we start to run our test suite many, many times, we're going to be creating many different schemas and many different roles inside there as well. So we probably want to make sure that we do some cleanup after ourselves when all these tests are complete. We probably want to make sure that we go into our test database, delete the schema we had created, and delete the role as well. So we can do that very easily by now adding a method to this context class. Let's take a pause right here, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video.